Hey everybody, Happy New Year. Hopefully, I guess. Anyway, you know the drill. Last week we did the 10 best movies, this week we do the 10 worst ones. Small hitch in that plan though? Well, couple of small hitches to be honest. Firstly, this was an unexpectedly busy and difficult year for me. I don't want to get into the details of it any more than I have to because I don't want it to feel like I'm whining or milking it for sympathy, but things were tough, then got tougher, and to be totally frank, I have no idea if 2018 will actually make things any better. I'm not optimistic about much like that these days. A side effect of that is that for my own sanity and psychological well-being, I kind of saw fewer movies this year than I usually do. I needed to make some sacrifices of time, and one place where cuts could be tolerated was in the time I spent going to movies that I either wasn't strongly inclined to see already and or wasn't assigned to see for work. And what that means is that a lot of the films that have been making the rounds on other worst of the year lists, I just didn't get to yet. Like Bright, didn't see it. Chips, didn't see it. 50 Shades Darker, didn't see it. Rings, didn't eventually see it. Rock Dog, didn't see it. Geostorm, shit, I forgot that even came out. Boss Baby, nope. The House, nope. Kidnap, Flatliners, Boo 2, Medea Halloween, Leatherface, Suburbicon, Amityville Awakening, Daddy's Home 2, The Star, Beyond Skyline, I didn't see any of that shit. Sorry. And then there's the issue that there were other things like Cure for Wellness or Valerian that a lot of people hated, but I thought were pretty interesting, however flawed, and plus The Book of Henry, which, okay, sure, bad movie, but it was way more bizarre and weird than it was bad, and I feel like it got dinged more for the first part than the second, and that's just not my scene, man. Ditto Ghost in the Shell, which was just kind of boring, honestly. So, don't look for any of those. Oh, and another thing, the best of video last week got hit with a bullshit content ID claim because I used clips from the trailers for the movies in question because, you know, what else would I use as a visual representation of the movies in question? Yes, it's being appealed, but while that appeal is in progress, I'm making no profit off that one, which is bad because if you're new around here, this is not a hobby. I do this shit for a living. In any case, I can't really afford to lose revenue from 2 of those in a row, and I feel like making a point in the thumbnail, so the spots where you would have seen video on this one, you will instead see this. Just this. Sorry, but that's what it's come to. Thank YouTube. Anyway, let's get to it. P.S. You can find my full reviews and the source for some of the paraphrased quotes here for almost all of these over on Geek.com. Number 10, Birth of the Dragon. A Bruce Lee origin story? That's a great idea. Unfortunately, what Birth of the Dragon delivers instead is the action-packed, true-life-inspired story of some guy named Steve who knew Bruce Lee. Maybe at one point. It's hard to imagine how you fuck up a movie about young Bruce Lee getting into an underground street fight where he may or may not have unlocked the secrets of his Jeet Kune Do martial arts technique for the first time by instead deciding, hey, how about we make the movie about not Bruce Lee? But here it is. Or rather was, because this vanished so fast I forgot about it until right now, and I'm betting several of you did too. Number 9, The Circle. Emma Watson saves the world from what if Google but evil in the kind of bad movie that can only be made by talented people. You have to be good at your job and committed to the craft to put this much sincere effort into such obvious nonsense. In this case, the filmmakers have taken no less than Watson, Patton Oswalt, John Boyega, Karen Gillan, and Tom Hanks and sent them all trudging through an adaptation of a Dave Eggers book that plays out like a parody novel trying to imagine if Michael Crichton had actually written something dumber than State of Fear. It keeps insisting that it's some kind of cutting-edge warning about the dark side of Silicon Valley, but it doesn't actually seem to know all that much about it, so instead it plays out like one of those similarly cheesy Japanophobic techno-thrillers from the 90s, but instead of Asians are scary, we're expected to be innately terrified of the millennial workplace aesthetic. Pass. Number 8, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. So, if they had the giant snake that whole time, why didn't they just use it right away, is the kind of question you end up walking away from this pile of suck with. It just goes on and on and on, a dreary march across ugly cinematography, uninspired action scenes, and what feels like thousands of interchangeable, uninteresting side characters all trying in vain to distract us from the fact that most of the time we're stuck with human charisma vacuum Charlie Hunnam. However we got to this point, the bottom line is that the film is too goddamn long, boring as hell, hideously ugly to watch, makes no sense whatsoever unless you have a working knowledge of the Camelot story already, and will royally piss you off if you do. Number 7, Power Rangers. Okay, yes, credit where due to Power Rangers for featuring both the first openly acknowledged autistic superhero and the first out queer superhero of the current cycle. Well done. Everything else still sucks. If your favorite thing in the world is watching a group of profoundly unlikable brats awkwardly transition from being shitty and snarky to one another for almost no reason to exchanging Red Dawn levels of melodramatic brothers-in-arms foxhole devotion for even less reason, Power Rangers is the movie for you, serving up an entire film's worth of sub-John Hughes teen angst over parental misunderstanding, small-town inertia, ennui, and revenge porn sexting scandals, really, all before the CGI animation team and the second unit boys try to take over and make a Michael Bay'd up Power Rangers episode for the last 25 minutes. Number 6, The Greatest Showman. The story of a shameless con artist and probable sociopath who made a fortune exploiting animals, the marginalized, and people with birth defects for the amusement of gullible rubes through hollow populist demagoguery, or according to this movie, the hero. But while not even the actual P.T. Barnum would have tried to sell this version of himself with a straight face, the problem is it can't be bothered to do it well. There's nothing fresh, original, or dynamic about anything going on in this movie. It's the most generic treatment of the subject possible, even amid the audacity of its historical revisionism, so there's nothing to distract from the cognitive dissonance of seeing this obvious story of scheming and exploitation presented as a jolly, life-affirming endeavor. And also, the songs aren't very good. Number 5, The Emoji Movie. I wanted to leave this off entirely because it's an easy target that everyone already had their fun with before it had even come out, and I hate presumptions based on the premise when it comes to this stuff, and yet, yeah, The Emoji Movie is almost as bad as you'd assumed it would be. A tacky, cheap-looking, unpleasantly cynical pile of nothing stood out in this garbage fire of a year. Number 4, The Dark Tower. Stephen King's sprawling, multi-volume fantasy metafiction celebration of Stephen King, basically, was only ever going to turn into a single movie by throwing most of it out, or just by making something that's impossible to follow if you're not a fan. Oddly, this aims to do both. It's obviously been cut to the bone, that's what you do when you know your movie is bad, make it short and make up your money in extra showtime, but it also doesn't make a lot of sense and isn't really worth investing the effort in it would take to work around that. Idris Elba is a magical interdimensional cowboy, Matthew McConaughey is basically Dennis Hopper from the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and the only reason this wasn't that hard to follow is that it was impossible to stay interested enough to try. Number 3, Justice League, a movie that was already in production when they got the bad news that its direct predecessor opened as one of the worst reviewed films of its year, prompting studio-wide panic and placing the rest of what was already a production slate of questionable ambition in jeopardy and setting off a troubled production rumor mill continued to plague it to this day, whose director stepped down from post-production owing to a family tragedy, leading to the film being finished by another filmmaker best known for similar features in a competing series, leading to still more drama involving massive reshoots and rumors of more drastic changes to tone, story, and pacing as its studio attempts an in-motion course correction. Does that strike you as a recipe for a good movie? No? Well, Justice League was not a good movie. It may not have been the full-time disaster that Batman v Superman was, but what is, and it's still pretty goddamn bad, and it's hard to believe we've still got at least 2 more of these goddamn things to get through before they officially hit that magic everything but Wonder Woman didn't happen button. I am just so tired thinking about all that. Number 2, American Assassin. I skipped all those very likely bad movies I mentioned up front, and yet somehow I still managed to catch this, the feature film adaptation of a series of books you apparently had to have watched a lot of Fox News a few years back to have heard of in the first place. Our premise, a random douchebag named Mitch Rapp sees his fiancée killed in a terrorist attack, so he teaches himself to infiltrate Al-Qaeda cells by being able to answer Quran trivia questions correctly, really, and then the CIA grabs him up and says, "Hey, not bad, would you also like to learn guns, kung fu, and get paid to do this shit?" Of all the things to decide to rip off in 2017, why would anyone decide what we really needed was an even stupider version of the Jack Reacher movies? Number 1, The Mummy, in which Universal Pictures boots up the dark universe by boldly turning to Warner Brothers and the DC Extended Universe and saying, "Oh, you call that killing a franchise in the crib?" The Mummy makes almost every mistake a supposed crossover kickoff can make, from stunt casting a name actor instead of building characters to stopping its own plot for extended teases about movies you haven't even committed to making yet, leaving what remains of the actual movie as nothing so much as a ripoff of Army of Darkness that didn't realize Army of Darkness was a comedy. The Mummy was a disaster that almost seems to have intentionally made every decision incorrectly on purpose, and yet, as a result, the whole enterprise is so bafflingly wrong-headed that I started to enjoy it for how bad it was. Almost. Fortunately, the audience seemed to make the right decision, and as such, it looks like we've been spared any further dalliances in the dark universe. So hey, good job, guys! At least we don't have that to look forward to. Hey gang, here's a question that keeps coming up. If your handle is Movie Bob, where are your movie reviews? Well, my old reviews are in a lot of places. You'll find many of them on my YouTube channel, but you'll find the brand new ones on Geek.com, an awesome site that's also your one-stop news source for science, TV, gaming, technology, nerd culture, the works. You can find all my reviews directly by going to geek.com/author/bchipman, because that's my real name, and you can get regular updates on all my reviews and all of Geek.com's other great content by signing up for their kick-ass newsletter at subscribe.geek.com. geek.com. And don't forget to also subscribe to the geek.com YouTube channel, where you'll find the videos that accompany my reviews and tons of other great content too. Remember, that's geek.com, the geek.com newsletter, and geek.com on YouTube. Make sure you don't miss out on all the latest Movie Bob reviews. You can also check out my own new website, Movie Bob Central, where you'll find my blog, links to all my work, and shop for my books, ebooks, and future Movie Bob products. And please remember to like these videos, share them with all of your friends, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching another Movie Bob production.